Hey everybody, welcome back to Kayfabe Critique. I'm David.
I'm Jason. What's good, y'all?
And so we're continuing our discussion of the Attitude Era and working our way towards WrestleMania 15. So, we recently covered Royal Rumble 1999, and now we're on to St. Valentine's Day Massacre, which was February 14th, 1999, exactly 20 years ago to today.
Oh my gosh, and today is Valentine's Day. I wonder if... Gosh, I'm trying to remember if I sent out anything or did anything for Valentine's Day.
Yeah, so today is the 20th anniversary. Today is Valentine's Day 2019, 20 years later. What do you think about this pay-per-view?
This pay-per-view was a perfect segue into WrestleMania 15.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was continuing the story. It was building that level of excitement. To me, this is one of those pay-per-views that speak to what the Attitude Era was.
Absolutely, no question.
So, just kind of catch everybody up. You can go back and watch our archives and see us building up towards this show as we continue to build towards WrestleMania 15. But to kind of catch you back up on what was going on. So, at Royal Rumble, we know The Rock regains the title from Mankind in an I Quit match. Mr. McMahon wins the Royal Rumble. We know prior to this happening, Shawn Michaels had became the commissioner. He became the corporate commissioner. Has a situation where Mankind's fighting Shane. He holds the corporation back to keep them from going down to save Shane. Mr. McMahon gets upset about this, tries to fire Shawn Michaels. Turns out he can't fire Shawn Michaels. His contract as commissioner is ironclad. And Shawn Michaels bring DX back, and was talking about he's going to bring back Austin that night, and he sets Mr. McMahon as the second person to enter the Rumble, with Austin being at number one. Shawn Michaels then gets set up, gets beat up off the show for a while, but now after the Royal Rumble, after Mr. McMahon wins, the next night on Raw, Mr. McMahon declares that he is not going to WrestleMania to face The Rock. He cuts the joke that The Rock had to wake up in fear, realizing he was going to be defending the title at WrestleMania against Mr. McMahon. But he announces he signed the paperwork to forego his title shot, and Shawn Michaels reappears as commissioner from his house with Stone Cold Steve Austin to inform Mr. McMahon that the rule book states that when he checked himself out as the number one contender, that the runner-up of the Royal Rumble is now going to WrestleMania, and that runner-up is Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Was that the rule book or was that a bottle or something?
Yeah, that was when they said he was going through the WWE rule book, and he holds up the bottle of Jack Daniels, in which Bruce Pritchard has acknowledged that they were both very drunk.
So, if you couldn't see that they was drunk, you ain't looking right.
Oh yeah. If you go back and watch that episode of Raw the night after Royal Rumble 99. Yeah, Shawn and Austin, and just Austin, you can tell by the way he's talking. Shawn actually held it pretty well.
Shawn held it well. Stone Cold was gone.
Yeah, and so, they were both drunk, and that was definitely a fun time. One of my favorite memories of it. But in this episode, as you find out that Austin is now the new number one contender, Austin tells McMahon that he will put up his number one contendership at WrestleMania if Vince McMahon will face him in a steel cage at St. Valentine's Day Massacre. And if Mr. McMahon can beat him, Austin won't go to WrestleMania. But if Austin wins a steel cage match, he's going to WrestleMania. So we're continuing to see the build. We're continuing to see the build of The Rock, the build of Austin, the build of Austin McMahon. And now we're going to get the Austin McMahon payoff inside a steel cage.
Yes.
And so, as we're going through this, we also had, The Rock had just taken the title off Mankind at Royal Rumble, holding the mic to him, and we know it was played over the intercom, Mankind saying I quit, which was actually earlier that night at Royal Rumble on Sunday Night Heat. Mankind comes out to acknowledge that he was knocked out, so he didn't actually scream the words. And we're end up setting up The Rock versus Mankind in a rematch, Halftime Heat, the first ever Halftime Heat.
Which we just had another one up during the Super Bowl, which was actually it wasn't hard to be better than the Super Bowl, but it was very much better than the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and in this situation, halftime heat in 1999, The Rock and Mankind, empty arena match, and Mankind regains the title from The Rock.
Classic. Absolute classic. I mean, just the comedy. You start to see the Rock, more of the comedic side of The Rock. Just the concept of empty arena. I know that I heard it that somebody had the idea because it had been done in another territory before, but
It had been done in Memphis, yes.
yeah, it had been done in Memphis, and this pay-per-view ironically is in Memphis. Shout out to my family in Memphis. But that was a concept that a lot of people had not seen on TV, and just the whole aesthetic of it, everything about it is just different, and they used the entire arena, which I thought was brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. And because it was pre-taped, they were able to do cuts, so you were able to move to the arena more fluidly. You were able to get the best angles as well. So, so let's get it up to the night. Let's get it up to St. Valentine's Day, 1999, and
If you really need to get it up, get you some Blue Chew.
and so you get into this night, and on Sunday Night Heat. And so, recently when they covered this on Something to Wrestle With, they talked about the timing was off with Shawn Michaels ending Sunday Night Heat by coming to the ring as McMahon's calling out Austin.
Mm-hmm.
Shawn Michaels comes out instead, and as he's telling Mr. McMahon he's protecting Austin from himself, Austin then comes out and the show kind of goes off the air.
Mm-hmm.
I remember watching live at the time with my friends thinking, oh, well, the pay-per-view is going to start with this segment. It's going to start with them still in the ring together.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just doing this to get people to hold on, buy the pay-per-view real quick if you weren't going to find out what was going to happen. But the pay-per-view starts as normal. They're not in the ring. Bruce Pritchard said the timing was just off. The cue wasn't hit on time or whatever it was. And, things happen. What are your thoughts on that?
I think Pritchard was there. That's probably exactly what happened, but
See, I have a different take on it. Go back and watch that interview. What is Shawn Michaels saying when he gets to the ring? There's nothing Shawn Michaels loves to do more 24 hours a day than whisper. And he keeps making comments about whisper. Shawn Michaels was just now starting to date the Nitro girl, Whisper, who he goes on to marry. We know they're still married to this day with kids. But he comes out on live TV and he keeps dropping the word whisper in there. And you can see in Vince McMahon's face, he looks a little annoyed. So I think Shawn Michaels was taking advantage of live TV and, doing shout outs to the woman he's dating at the time, who will end up becoming his wife. But I think that's where they lost the time.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. And I mean, hey, I ain't mad at you, HBK. It worked.
Yeah, definitely no. But when I immediately found out, that he was dating the girl Whisper back then, I immediately remember that promo, and still to this day, I believe that's what he was doing, and that's where they lost the time.
Hey, again, I ain't mad at you, HBK. You do what you got to do.
So the show starts. Let's go through what happened actually here on the show. So we know it kicks off with Gold Dust beats Blue Dust. We then go in and Bob Holly beats Al Snow for the vacant hardcore title. And this was an interesting hardcore match. We got to see them go outside. We got to see them fight in different areas.
Mm-hmm.
And when Bob Holly wins, the crowd goes crazy.
Yeah, I mean, you got to see. Didn't they get to see a little bit of the Mississippi River?
Yeah.
I mean, so people were invested in these characters during this time. I mean,
Yeah, absolutely.
Everybody had something. It's like it doesn't seem like there were just any matches where the crowd just sitting on their hands like, get this crap over with.
Yeah, and like we've talked about, before, maybe not these matches may not all hold up.
Mm-hmm.
Looking back, but at that time, the crowd was into these matches back then. They were into these characters back then. These characters were all important because they all had something going on. Everyone contributed to the show.
Exactly, and you don't see that now. You see a show basically being carried by the same people, which well, I guess some of the same people are pretty good, but you just need that emotional connection to keep you. I gotta have an emotional connection to sit and watch something for 3 hours.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, it follows up from here. Bossman beats Midian, and then Viscera attacks. So, talk about continuing to carry a story forward. Viscera attacks, and we're really starting to see the foundation of the ministry coming together. And we know this is going to be a bigger, this is starting to build towards the next month, the pay-per-view with WrestleMania. We're going to see Undertaker and Bossman. But we're going to continue to see the build of the ministry because we know that's going to play a lot bigger part after WrestleMania into the summer.
Right. I mean, there was always it was like they were always thinking like, okay, how are we going to build what's next? Where are we trying to go? What are we trying to do? I mean, that's why I say again, it was a perfect segue into WrestleMania.
Yeah, and so there was always, little pieces dropped so that way the dots can connect down the line. After that, Owen Hart and Jeff Jarrett beat D'Lo and Mark Henry. And then Val Venus defeats Ken Shamrock with help from Ryan Shamrock with Billy Gunn as the referee. And then afterwards, Billy Gunn attacks Val Venus after the match. So we know, we had talked about, during this build-up of you had layered in DX versus the Corporation. You used Shawn Michaels to kind of help create that and get it going. And so after Chyna had won the DX versus Corporation Royal Rumble, gets her into the actual Royal Rumble. After the Royal Rumble, Chyna turns on DX and actually becomes part of the Corporation. So here at St. Valentine's Day Massacre, you're able to see Kane and Chyna defeat Triple H and X-Pac.
Wow.
So you have, not only has Chyna competed in the Royal Rumble, but now here she is on a pay-per-view in a tag team match, a mixed gender match, but only on one side, and she actually scores the pinfall to win.
And she's not in the Hall of Fame?
So from there, we go into one of the big matches. So we had two main events on this show. The first being the WWE Championship, Mankind defending against The Rock. The rivalry so far has been brutal. It's been a well-told story. Like so many little nuances that really help make this story. What did you think about this match?
I thought this one was a logical continuation of what they did last month, based on the fact that Mankind was knocked out. I mean, the chair shots, which we know went over the line, but I thought you started to see a last man standing match just continues that storyline of just, I quit. I mean, so Mankind really didn't say I quit, so you can't stand, you can't fight. To quote Karate Kid or something like that. And so I dug it. The ending, at the time I didn't understand it, but hey, it gave us another rematch.
Yeah, and so when you look at how they've done this, rivalry, so you start off with Survivor Series 98, they ring the bell on Mankind saying he said he quit. And that he then gets screwed over at Rock Bottom. But then he's able to win the title on January 4th. And then he goes into Royal Rumble and he gets screwed again by not saying I quit. So the logical step is a last man standing match. Take it out of there where they can't screw him over. They have to keep him down. So it's been perfectly built. Like first you're saying he said I quit, so he's like, well then put me in an I quit match. But then you screw him over that way, so now it's like, okay, keep me down because you're going to screw me over if it comes down to a chance that I could be submitted. So it builds to a last man standing match. So far, each match has been the logical continuation of the next one, like you said. But yeah, in this match, we get the shock, and neither one of them win. Double chair shot, they're both down. Almost a Rocky II style finish, except neither gets up.
And at the time, like I said, I was pretty disappointed. But again, you're making both guys, you're not really hurting either guy by having them lose that night, and you're giving yourself one more match. So it's like, you have the I Quit match, you have the last man standing match, then the next night, you get a ladder match.
Yeah, and what's great about this is you initially don't know there's going to be another one. You think this is it. Mankind survived the rivalry. Mankind's holding on to the title. Even the next night on Raw after this, Shawn Michaels brings out Mankind and Stone Cold as this is your WrestleMania main event. And the crowd's going crazy. And then that's when they bring out The Rock to re-challenge him. So it gives you one more change prior to WrestleMania.
Yeah, I mean, and you're in a Monday Night War at this time, which, I mean, granted you have the momentum, but you want to keep building that momentum. And we've already seen that title changes bring ratings.
Yeah, and we know this was a good match. Where would you rank it in terms of their matches against each other? Would you say it's their best, or?
I think their best. I think their best was honestly January 4th, 99. Or maybe I'm just biased to that one just because of that being Foley's first title win.
See, and I always, even though it was extremely violent, Royal Rumble 99, I don't know if that one was going to be topped. That was so shocking and just so incredible. So something you didn't believe you would see, that as good as this match was, it wasn't going to be able to outdo that.
Right. No, you're not going to top. I mean, Royal Rumble 99 and January 4th, 99, they're kind of like neck and neck for me. But I think that none of the matches they had were bad, don't get me wrong. But as they spent more time in the ring with each other, they probably wrestled on some house shows and stuff like that, you started to see the chemistry develop. And
this is the fourth pay-per-view in a row where they're now facing each other for the title, but it's still exciting. Yeah. It was such a well-done story that you're still excited and you're still hanging on for more.
Right, it's the fourth pay-per-view, and then you had a halftime heat match in between there.
And a Raw
match in between there. And then you're going to get another Raw match. So, yeah, it was kind of like the first best of 7.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or another best of 7.
So the next is the main event. As we mentioned earlier in the show, Steve Austin putting on his #1 contendership for WrestleMania on the line against the owner, the evil owner, Mr. McMahon, in a cage match. And this match is remembered for multiple things, but one of the big ones is Vince McMahon taking a bump off the cage. Austin slamming his head into the top of the cage, and he flies off through the announcer's table.
Hey, one thing about Vince McMahon, one thing about any good leader is they don't ask anyone to do something that they are not willing to do themselves. And if the boss is going to take a bump off the steel cage, you best believe anybody else is going to take a bump off the steel cage.
Outside of Mick Foley being thrown off the top of the Hell in a Cell, the only thing close to this at this point was Shawn Michaels going off the side of the cell.
Yeah. And when you think about, it's like Shawn Michaels is a wrestler.
Yeah, McMahon's not the athlete, HBK was.
Right. I mean, granted, Vince was and still is jacked.
Yes.
Yeah. But there's a difference between taking bumps like that on a day-to-day basis and being the guy who signs the checks.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, initially, one of the things I remember watching this live and thinking that the cage looked small, that it didn't look as big as the normal cage, the normal big blue cage. It didn't look as large as it. And so initially I thought the bump off the top, him hitting his head, was the reason the cage was small. But then as the show goes on, I developed another reason for it. But so that's what I'm seeing right there. They get into the ring, and the reason I continue to think it's just because he was going to take that bump and they wanted it to be like, oh, he went from the top, and so they just lowered it to let him go from the top. we see as they're going on, every time Austin has a chance to escape, McMahon doesn't want him to escape because he can't let Austin go on to WrestleMania. He's doing his best to keep him from getting the title back, so he keeps flipping Austin off, driving him back in. Austin continues to just beat the snot out of him. McMahon showing that he is just a street fighter, so telling a great story in there. But then the reason the cage is smaller reveals itself to make the Big Show look even bigger.
And he looked huge.
Yeah, when he stepped into the ring that night, for watching WWE television, he hadn't been on WCW for a while. You're watching WWE television and he's larger than any guy on WWE.
By far.
And he steps into the ring and the cage is already smaller, so it makes him look that much bigger. And, he does a good job. And on Something to Wrestle With, they talk about, they thought the ending was kind of wonky, it was kind of weird, but if you look at it, when he first steps up, he bashes Austin off different sides of the cage.
Mm-hmm.
And then, McMahon's really encouraging him, really throw him hard. And it's that he has so much strength, he has so much force that he throws Austin through the cage.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first time that had ever been done.
Yeah.
And even the look on Austin's face was like, what the hell? Not even acknowledging that he won. Like, oh my God, this guy just threw me through a cage.
Yeah, they made him look like a giant. They made him look larger than life. They made him look huge because he was like one of the first, if not the first, big signing that they had taken from WCW.
Yeah, he was definitely, because this was prior to Jericho.
Yeah.
This was really WWE's first big steal away. And so, yeah, you're right. And so, two things to point out on that. They talk about this on Something to Wrestle With. One was, as we covered our episode on Vince Russo.
Mm-hmm.
And we talk about, is it true that he was so much involved in the Attitude Era where a lot of people try to say he wasn't? On Something to Wrestle With, did you notice what Bruce Pritchard said about this when Conrad was asking him about this debut?
I didn't notice that.
He made the comment of, that's just what I heard from Russo and McMahon. They always had a united front. They played things close to the vest.
Huh.
So you're saying right there, those are the only two guys that had anything to do with creative, the only two guys that really knew that things were going on. So that just kind of adds more into, well then wait, how are you saying that no, everybody was involved if only those two were really doing everything? But I digress. So the other part of this was, they were talking about, why debut him that way. It just felt kind of weird because it really didn't go anywhere after this. That one I see kind of two ways. One, this was a way that when he debuted, it got you talking
Mm-hmm.
and left you with something more to talk about as the show was
Right.
going off the air. But at the same time, I do agree because you didn't have anything huge for him the next night. And so, looking back, could they have done something to where he just stayed really close to McMahon after this
Mm-hmm.
and just interfered here and there? Like, we know he's going to cost Mankind the title the next night in the ladder match. Could you have just used him here and there like that? But without, we know there was a couple instances where Austin made him look bad and they put him in the ring prior to WrestleMania. Could you have held him out of the ring and whenever he got his hands on people, he just destroyed them? So that way, after Austin regains the title, here's your big match for Austin to go against next.
You could have done that, and I think that backseat booking, that probably makes a little bit more sense in hindsight, but we don't know what was going on behind the scenes, and when you think about the Big Show, at this point, I don't know that he would have been the best opponent for Austin because, they did have a match. They had a match on Raw, and it just kind of looked awkward.
Yeah, and in their defense, the way they didn't announce him the next time on Raw was that he was going to be the referee of the WrestleMania 15 main event. So we already know what he did to Austin in the cage. Now they're saying he's going to be the referee of the main event. We know he's aligned with Vince McMahon, so it almost looks like they're setting up Austin to screw him again at WrestleMania to try to make sure he doesn't walk out with that title.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know what it is about wanting to debut guys as referees, but in that case, it actually makes more sense because you're booking him as a referee, like your heel referee, to try to screw over the guy that everybody wants to win, but he's bigger than everybody in the ring, so I don't know if you really want that either.
Yeah, absolutely. So that wraps up St. Valentine's Day Massacre, and we know after this we're going to go into WrestleMania 15, so we will definitely be covering that. We'll cover starting with the next night on Raw after St. Valentine's Day Massacre, and we will lead all the way up to WrestleMania 15 with The Rock versus Stone Cold Steve Austin.
The first of one of the greatest trilogy of matches in the history of WrestleMania.
So if you haven't already, subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can see this episode and many more going back through our season 1 as well as all these episodes so far in season 2. And check out our social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So, thank you for being here with us. And when we come back, we will be covering probably the hottest superstar in all of wrestling right now.
The Man.
That's right. We're going to go into a look at Becky Lynch and how hot Becky Lynch is right now. So, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.
All right, y'all be careful.